we discuss these internally, and we begin to analyze the information that we've received. We begin to quickly narrow down the platform vendors, perhaps from 5 down to 2, maybe down to 1 if it's really obvious. And then we begin to use the 1 or 2 that we have left and invite them to come in and do demonstrations. And this is where what we've put into play theoretically actually makes its way to practice, because typically in a demonstration we give vendors a 2+ hour window of time. We'll ask them specifically to focus on perhaps some of our POC requirements, proof of concept requirements that we've laid out, and if they've built a proof of concept, some of the demo points that we want to cover, and then they have a chance to have a free-form demo, show what's hot with their product. Here's an example of a lot of what we talked about earlier in terms of different processes, kind of what we call the selection funnel, which we go through some gates, if you will, in each one of the stages that begins to narrow the number of vendors that we begin to talk to. Sometimes we're not just left with 1 vendor. We may be left with 2, and at that point, if they're very close, maybe it's a point of negotiation around price that helps us decide what vendor we want to go with. So this is a common process, having the must-have gate, requirements gate, and then demonstration gate to drive us to the vendor selection. With this process that I've just walked you through, we actually had the opportunity to use it with a variety of customers. And an example of a customer that had the need for a larger digital platform is an international manufacturer of consumer electronics and goods. It's a common brand you'd find in many of the big box stores. These folks were working with a decade-old platform. Their website was running on it. Their e-commerce site was running on it. Their partner portal was running on it. It had a variety of components, a lot of custom-built code you can only imagine from 10 years ago. And it was limiting their ability to grow as a customer. It was limiting their ability to engage with their customer base and their partner channel. So they're looking for a change here. And with that, they were looking for both web content management, search, e-commerce, and then we discovered the need for what was called product information management later in the process. A little background, it was about a 12-week engagement, about 30 stakeholders we engaged with throughout the organization, 6 different departments, and across 5 different countries. So it was an international group of stakeholders. With that, we spent a lot of time capturing requirements, what we would call elicitation sessions to elicit information from people. We started things off with best practices session, getting everyone level set, educating people as to the process, and then also a team elicitation session where everyone can come to the table and give us some of their hot button requirements. And then we started digging into the groups and the individual groups and their concerns, and finally individual stakeholders, some of the key management. And then spent special attention to some of the overseas teams. We did not want to leave them out. They had some very important input. Plus, we wanted them tightly involved in the overall engagement to make sure they felt involved. With that, what we found is that that information was used to drive the various decision points. Again, the must-have requirements, the RFI responses, and eventually the vendor demonstration were all key parts of this process that we use. During this journey, we identified a variety of different platforms that could fit the bill, if you will. And one of the approaches that we take when we do kind of a broad digital platform selection is this notion of using buckets of options. And what that means is that typically there isn't one set of platforms that is the ideal set. There's typically a set of options, all of which will work, but they have their pros and cons as a set rather than individual platforms. So as we look at this, we had content management as a need, e-commerce, search, merchandising, which is a subset of e-commerce, product information management, which is a subset of e-commerce, and then analytics. And here you can see that we're looking at leveraging some of the analytics that were built into a CMS platform, which is Sitecore. We were looking at a variety of e-commerce platforms, including SaaS-based and on-premise-based with Digital River, and premise-based with Microsoft Commerce Server, as well as hybrids. And then search, as well as merchandising, either through OMS or through the search engine in some cases. So you can see that there may be a variety of different platforms that support specific requirements and use cases. It's not always cut and dry. It's not always clear on the outset of going through a process like this. Eventually, the team, including us, as well as the customer, sat down. We went through the pros and cons, and we were able to narrow it down to a specific solution, which involved option number 3. You know, along the way, one of the things, again, as a learning experience, is the notion that as you go through this broad requirements analysis within your organization, what you might find is that there's some serendipitous situations, things that you didn't expect to come up. And one was, in this case, is that the customer nor us initially realized that there was a need for a product information management system. But then as we began to speak with various stakeholders, particularly the product managers and the marketers, it became very apparent that there was a hole that would not be solved or filled, I should say, by content management, by e-commerce, or by search or analytics. And that led us to the notion that we needed to take a look at product information management systems. Now, this might be a common journey as you go through larger digital platform analysis requirements, and you say, you know, we didn't realize we needed marketing automation, but you know, everyone's talking about able to do this, these dialogues, electronic dialogue with the customer, nurturing campaigns, and things like that. I guess we may need to look at that. So you never know when you might see a need where you weren't expecting it. So in the end, this was a successful selection. We were able to identify 3 products, and the customer and us were very happy with the process. Stakeholders were happy because they were involved. So it's a good example of following through a set process, getting people involved along the way early on, educating them, making sure you had a broad set of stakeholders getting buy-in along the way, so that when we got to the end, there were no surprises. Everyone was on board, and people felt very comfortable with the decision that was made. So, great example of how a process can work, even in a complex situation, even when you have a lot of stakeholders involved with very strong ideas. So, great. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to take some time now with the 20 minutes that we have left, and ask you to provide us with some of the questions that you might have around the process, around the way we might do it, around perhaps some of the pitfalls, and we'd love to hear from you, and feel free to reach out. You should see the ability for you to ask questions through the mechanism on the GoToWebinar, and then we'll be glad to answer those verbally. All right. I think someone raised their hand. Don't be afraid to raise your hand again.
I have a question. It says, why was...
Yep.
The question is, why was Joomla not considered as a CMS?
Go ahead and repeat the question again.
Yeah, the question was, why was Joomla not considered as a CMS?
Yeah, great question. So in this case, the customer has some very specific requirements. And remember we talked about the must-have requirements. Now, we do work with Joomla, we do work with Drupal and a variety of other platforms. And what you'll find in the industry in general, you'll find technologies that are based either on an open source PHP stack, so a LAMP stack. You'll find platforms that are based on Java, and you find platforms that are based on the Microsoft .NET stack. So there's three primary stacks that you will find these products in general based. In this specific requirement, the customer had some needs around .NET because they had already had an entire team spun up to do .NET development and .NET support, and their entire internal infrastructure was really based around .NET. So actually one of the must-have requirements early on was around a CMS that would support the .NET stack. So that immediately eliminated Java-based solutions like Day or FatWire, as well as PHP solutions like a Drupal or other open source solutions.